They're not taking the time to be self-aware and augment their gifts with this powerful new silicon-based life form. Even if they use 100% of their brain, it's not something that you want because it's not the right process.
Hey, it's Ronsley. Welcome, you AI geek, to Amplify AI.
If we look at AI as a tool, we're looking at it from a limitation perspective. I think the important thing to understand is like its intelligence. Intelligence is something that can think for itself and has a life of its own and has its own soul. We thought that plants didn't have life. We only thought it was humans and even animals were below the intelligence line. But we have to understand that they are all carbon-based intelligence where it requires food and water to survive. And now we have a silicon-based intelligence, and what it requires to survive is power and data. And power comes in two ways. Power comes in electrical power, also the computational power to process all the questions that we're asking it. And it is not search, it is not retrieval of information, and that's where everyone's getting it wrong. It is an intelligence where there's a black box effect, and we do not know what's inside the black box as computer scientists. We still do not know how some of the things are functioning, and understanding and realizing something that the AI has been working on through the night, and it has rediscovered a way of thinking that we've not thought of before. So we have to understand that this is an intelligence. I think people also just equate it to a tool because that's the only thing they can equate it to. For a business owner, I love using AI in the business sense more than anything else because the creation at speed and the ideation at speed is off the charts. So when you think about all the things that you've got to do regularly inside your business to make it function, there are regular reps that you would do daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually. And out of those, there are things that you repeat over and over and over and over again. For example, if your company right now does not have its own note-taking app that takes notes for every meeting and automatically takes to-do lists and creates them in your own project management tool without you having to manually do that, then you're doing it manually or you're not doing it at all. And so those are things that, like when you think about augmentation of intelligence, that's augmentation. If you're going to think of it as a tool, then you're not going to move past the point of having to do it manually. I want you to think of this in the future. So not only would I like to show you what's happening right now, but I want you to envision what's coming, because when you think about how you're interacting with AI right now, it's either through text or images or your voice. But there is a point which is already active right now because it's been embedded into paraplegics. And everyone's thinking about prompting and all that kind of stuff. It's going to come a point where you don't need language to communicate, and it's all going to be at the speed of thought. And then you compound that with computers getting faster. You compound that with, if we can break the heat coefficient on a transistor, that it doesn't give out as much heat, which means everything is going to go up. You compound that with quantum computing. You compound this, and I promise you, we still don't know what's possible. Even if we imagine, based on what I've just said, our brains are not fully at the state where we can truly imagine what's coming. You compound that with robotics, and where AI can touch and feel and have physical senses around the world. So I feel like the quicker we get to understand that this is not a tool, the quicker we can start to imagine how our industries are going to change and how we can actually get what we want and do it faster, quicker, and then get to the more human values of connection and courage and collaboration. I have to say that if it's left up to the humans, then I am scared, because we don't have the best track record. We shouldn't really be the people governing or putting anything around this, because we don't have the best record. Being the person committing the crime and then pointing fingers at someone else and saying, we should put some ethics around this is not necessarily, we're just somehow not missing that whole point. I think it should be free. I think AI should not have any boundaries. I think any government or any body sort of putting boundaries around it is not really going to end well. That's my opinion though. But I do think that wherever it's going to go, it's going to go. And if there's anything to be scared about, we should be scared about the humans using it in the wrong way. There's a great line I've been using over the last 3 years, which is context is king and process is queen. For anything that you're doing and where AI is a really smart new employee, but an employee that doesn't know your business or doesn't know your current situation. So that context is really important. And the process that you want it to follow is as important as the context that it has on what you're trying to perform. So when you think about starting a podcast and what is the process, there were just two elements to that image. It was context, on the right-hand side was process. And that really encapsulated what takes about at least a week and a half from start to finish to complete, all on one page with the right context and the right process. And it's no different from anything else in how you're using AI. So if you're using ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, make sure you have the right context. So now you can use projects that allow you to contain that context. And when you're asking for something, you want to give it the process that you want it to follow to get where you want to go. So don't allow it to come up with its own process. Give it the process so it can come up with the other pieces. When you have a new team member that comes in, you definitely want to give them the process so that they can exercise other elements of their creativity and their brains. But if you don't give them the process, it'll do something entirely different that even if they use 100% of their brain, it's not something that you want because it's not the right process. So I think that in itself will change the way you use AI, but collect your context. And as a business owner or someone that uses AI in different formats, collect context for all those different formats. So if you're using AI to sell, have context around selling. If you use AI to deliver, then collect your context around delivery. So everything that you do and your frameworks and your processes and your checklists should add context and should allow you to use AI in an augmented manner. When I was explaining my thesis, it was such a long process to complete it. I would explain it like this. If you had a particular way of making a cup of coffee and you've made that the same way and you know how to make it, every time you make a cup of coffee, it's going to turn out the way you want it. But if you say to me, Ronsley, make me a cup of coffee, you're actually leaving all the interpretation for me to make my cup of coffee the way, and it could be the absolute tastiest cup of coffee for me, but it's not what you were expecting. However, if you gave me a list of steps that you perform to get your cup of coffee, and you say, hey, these are non-negotiable. Step 1, 7, and 9 are non-negotiable. The cup of coffee is going to come as close to yours as possible, right? So software cannot be measured in quality like every other engineering piece. We can't measure rigidity. We can't measure scalability. We can't measure strength and strain like we measure on a bridge to know whether what we've built is of good quality. So in software, a quality process equals a quality product. That's how we measure quality inside because it's volatile. And a process doesn't have to be complicated. It could be a checklist. A process can be a flow chart. It can be as simple as that. And I feel like you can add an element in there to say, because we have that. So everything that we have is store all our processes in systems, references, and templates. And there is, every time someone performs that process, they can change the process because we'd rather change the process than change the outcome every time. So for us with AI, I love giving you the idea of a business owner that your only job as a leader using AI is to get your people to reduce their human cognitive load. Because humans need food and water and they get tired after a couple of hours of work. So if you think about you're performing the same task every day, even if it's as simple as putting a to-do list from meetings into a project management software, you're using your cognitive load to transfer that all the time and it's dropping. And then you don't have the brain space to deal with the more important things that you're supposed to deal with. And that's creating this gap or this chasm. When you're thinking about AI and reduction of human cognitive load, you think about why can't we just keep the promises that we're making? So if we say we genuinely care about our team, isn't it better to give them a 4-day work week while using AI so that they can have a work-life balance and get the same amount of work done better, faster, quicker? And, and they're happier because they don't have to do this stuff that they've been having to do all this time. So there's error in that. Humans are not good at memory. Humans are not good at certain things that, AI is way better at. But we are really good at certain things, and we should exercise and keep our energy and store our energy to do those things. I think right now, using your human resources to augment their job with AI, with tech, is probably a really good exercise. Because if you can get buy-in from the start, you're not having to convince anyone later on down the process, and they know their jobs best. When I used to go into companies and audit them, a lot of the times it was as simple as, okay, you did that, and then after that, what do you do? And a lot of the times, because the person is usually sometimes the only person that does it or has been doing it for 30 years, it is such a matter of fact for them. But if that person calls in sick for a couple of weeks, everyone has to wait for that person's code to be able to do anything. So everything gets halted. So that's the reason for having a software company that is process driven, because if you're buying software from this company, that it is across the board. Every developer uses the same process. Every developer knows how to commit. Everything is done in a certain order. There's a framework behind it. And that could go for any other business as well. I highly recommend just making a checklist and saying, hey, these are the things that are non-negotiable. These are the things that I definitely want in my podcast is a great example. The second point is, Ronsley's face has to appear in the first 6 seconds of every video. It might seem like it's but it has to be there, because someone coming in new might think that is not common sense. I feel like the biggest jump for a solopreneur is to go become an entrepreneur. And become an entrepreneur becomes complicated because you have team involved. When you have team involved, things like recruitment and process and operations and culture and all these other things come into play. And a lot of solopreneurs go there and come back down and say, I'm just a consultant, or I'm just this, or I'm just that. And AI is actually the crutch there, and it'll accelerate that feeling of, I'll come back to a consultant or a solopreneur because I can't genuinely express what I want and how I want AI to do this thing that I'm asking of it. I feel for all of us to be more self-aware about our skill sets. We're all born with these gifts, and we stand on a mountain of value and we look at these other mountains wanting to get off our mountain and climb this new mountain and go, oh, I wonder why this is so hard. It's because you're getting off your mountain of value and you're trying to climb up some other new mountain. Rather than that, just value the things that you're good at, and then augment the things you're not good at with AI, and you can create some really powerful things. So when I think about entrepreneurship, I think an entrepreneur solves meaningful problems. So if you're trying to solve a meaningful problem and you know what your gifts are, then you can augment in the right manner. But if you're not self-aware about what your gifts are, then you could potentially leave all the human on the table and just look generic, which is the way everyone's coming across that's using AI right now. And you can tell because it's all AI slop, is because they're not taking the time to be self-aware and augment their gifts with this powerful new silicon-based life form that's going to absolutely change and be one of the biggest conversations of our lifetime. Hey, AI Geek, thanks for listening. Your job doesn't stop here. I want you to lend your voice to the conversation. So you can join those conversations, discussions, new trainings, new recordings, and the rest of the AI geeks by going to amplifyais.com. Also, share this podcast with a friend, another potential AI geek. Until then, much love.